Hello, and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. My name is Brooke Brigham. I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist.
And we are back for the second part of our coverage of the series American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson. We're going to cover part 3 and 4. If you missed part 1 and 2, that was last week.
Mm-hmm.
So just go back to last week and you can find that. So this one picks up. So it's part 3 is called the Circus.
Mm-hmm.
And it picks up, the trial has already started. But they start to get into the DNA evidence. And this guy, Bill Thompson, who is a defense attorney and DNA expert, he's a big part of kind of explaining and pulling together the second half in both of these episodes. So he reminds us that, it wasn't until 1988, 89 that the first DNA testing began and started becoming common in the scientific community. So this is only 1994 where we are now. So it's still very new. And later in the series, we get really down into the weeds of just how much this got messed up.
Yeah.
So, but right now we're introduced to Barry Scheck, who we saw in the last part as well. And he and Peter Neufeld, founders of the Innocence Project, he says, he looks at DNA as how we can tell a story that's consistent with innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And basically that consists of planting of evidence, contamination of evidence. And that's kind of the theme of the rest of this series. And it culminates in the verdict. And I have to say that after watching this, I view this verdict in a completely different way than I ever did before.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think at the time, everyone was so caught up in this notion that the jury found OJ not guilty simply just because.
Yeah.
Just because it was payback for Rodney King, payback for the LAPD. And you get these ideas kind of frozen in your mind at the time, and then you go forward and you kind of look at it through that lens. And now I'm like, wait a minute. No.
Yeah.
There was real, serious, reasonable doubt here.
Yeah.
And it really got lost in everything, because this is such a media frenzy that focused on so much stuff that just superfluous stuff that, nobody really focused on the fact that, that this is not a joke. This was really serious. There was evidence of contamination. There was evidence of planting evidence. And this is something that had been going on in the LAPD rampantly for a long time. This was nothing new. And it came out of Mark Furman's mouth, even though he tried to walk it back.
Yeah.
So what happened was, it's not that the black jurors said, oh, we're just going to let OJ go. They could actually see the reasonable doubt through the lens of their lived experience.
Yes.
They knew that there was dishonest and corrupt cops, whereas white people could not see the reasonable doubt because that's not their experience. They don't experience corruption at this level. They never believed that a cop would do that. And they even have random people, when they go to these bars and these places where people are talking about the verdicts and stuff. And all these white people are saying, oh, come on, this just doesn't happen. And so it really clicked for me. I was like, oh, okay. This isn't just some willy-nilly, we're going to get back at the cops thing.
Yeah. Well, they do follow one of the jurors, Yolanda Crawford. And I appreciated her because I really felt like she was kind of giving us her play-by-play of what her mindset was. And her mind, she said, I had friends who were cops. I knew people. I knew someone who had been shot by a cop who had been killed. Like, she really walked into this not, with an open mind and an open, I don't know what happened. And that was the thing, was that as I was watching, day after day of this, this poor guy, what's his name? Fung.
Oh, Dennis Fung. Yeah.
Poor Dennis Fung. Watching Dennis Fung and just hearing about Mark Furman. I never heard the tapes before. We got to get to that one too. But I was like, yeah, okay. I'm with her now. And Yolanda's sort of taking us through going, yeah, okay. And this is the point where I'm starting to think, wait, hold on a second. Maybe there's something off about this.
Yeah, because she was being very reasonable. It wasn't like because they kept having her come in and just give these short little snippets. And I'm like, where is this going? Like, and it kind of wasn't obvious till the end. But along the way, she would just sort of chime in with a sentence or two and say, she had empathy for Nicole. She's like, she must have been terrified. That's awful. She didn't dismiss the domestic violence, which was another narrative that the prosecution, kind of as sore losers, quite frankly, were putting out this stuff like, oh, the jury didn't believe that OJ could have beat his wife. And it's like, no one said that. That's a different issue. I realize that this is a domestic violence killing, and domestic violence is a progression and it happens on a continuum. But, they weren't giving the jury any credit for any critical thinking.
Yeah.
So,
well, this was really interesting. I feel like I learned a lot more. Again, we talked about this last week where we're like, do we really need another OJ doc? And this made me go, yes, we do. Because I learned things that I never knew before. I never knew that Mark Furman, and I thought we were going to get a little bit more from Mark Furman. I'm a little disappointed. Like, Mark, this was your moment. And you kind of threw up, you're kind of like, okay, this is all how you see me. It's like, no, Mark, you could have done some work on yourself. Like, I kind of just feel like he's just like, see, you all just saw me as a racist, as opposed to him stopping and looking at himself a little bit.
Why are you here? Why
did you doing some work on yourself? I would have a tremendous amount of respect for him. He said, you know what? I sat down and I did a lot of work, and I looked at myself, and I looked at my biases, and I looked at my beliefs, and I realize now this is what's going on. But anyway, let's putting him aside. I didn't realize that he had gone to the LAPD and said, can I have my pension now? Because I'm so racist. And I was like, whoa. Wait a second. So explain that, because I'm so confused. Okay.
So he went out on disability claiming, and a lot of cops were doing this at the time. So they would go out they have these stress disability claims saying that, this job is stressing me out because it's too much. Anyway, so he's out on this stress disability claim. He then applies to get an early pension to make it permanent. Like, okay, pay me for the rest of my life so I can get out of here. And they have this hearing. And his argument is that he was so racist and so biased against Black people and minorities that he was incapable of functioning as a police officer.
Yeah. So
that all these years of all these experiences had made him violent. He admitted to being violent, to having violent thoughts, wanting to hurt people, actually hurting people. He's talking about, choking people out. These are suspects. These are, just people he's encountering in his job. And apparently they didn't believe him. They voted 6-0 against him for this pension thing. And they said, go back to work. And so then they did this to a lot of cops. And then here we are. Here's the result of go back to work. Because obviously he was telling the truth, because he went on to continue to talk about people in this manner, as we saw on the tapes from the screenwriter. And he possibly planted evidence in the O.J. Simpson case.
Yeah, I mean that was shocking to me because I was like, wait a minute, and then you make him go back to work, and that is a real problem. I mean, there's several problems, right? But this has been shown. I don't have stats in front of me, but that there is higher prevalence of anger and violence and domestic abuse with people that are in these law enforcement positions, in the military.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of times for the military, someone who's in the military goes into law enforcement. Like, there is this correlation that the job does affect people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it does begin to eat away at people. And I mean, the fact that he said to them, I can't do this job. And they were just like, well, no, you can go back in. Like, did they all think that people were lying to them about, they must have thought everything was like a giant scam.
They thought these people were just lying because they wanted to just stop working, collect a check.
Here's the thing. If you want to stop working and collect a check, you pick something. I mean, of all the things to pick, that one is the one that I thought was like, oh, dear God, you're going to pick this? So this is, I mean, I'm sorry, but LAPD and LA and the city and like, you guys got to take some ownership here of something, because you guys let this guy back out and a lot of other people back out. Yeah. Those tapes, I had never heard the tapes before. If you watched me in my living room, my mouth was like,
yeah, no one can see you.
Tess. I know. I was going to put some things underneath. Sorry,
they still can't see you.
Still can't see me. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah, I was aghast.
Yeah, he admitted to torturing people.
Yes.
Torturing people, beating the hell out of them. He talked about one person, beat him till his face was mush.
Mush.
I mean, I don't think you make that up just to get a disability claim. I mean,
listen, there's lots of people I've disliked in this world, and there's lots of people that I would love to just punch right in the face.
Once. Yeah,
punch once, maybe two, maybe a kick. But mush, like, I don't think I have enough anger, especially for someone who's a stranger. Like, stranger person. Like, the only people I would want to punch are people that I actually know have hurt me in some way, shape, or form. Right? So you're talking about wanting to make someone's face mush that has done nothing to you.
Yeah.
No relationship.
It's disturbing. It's
very disturbing.
And I think that's why you didn't see any contrition with Mark Furman. Yeah. I think he was pretty far gone a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And he's not interested in.
So Mark Furman's not interested in personal growth, I take it.
No.
Because I thought that because he does not talk publicly, I thought him doing this documentary, I was really thinking that, in these 2 episodes, I'm going to get a real answer from him of like, this is who I am. This is what happened. This is what's going on. It's 30 years later. This is what I think. And, Chris Darden's had some moments of understanding. I think it's very interesting that Marcia Clark, I don't think Marcia Clark, I find a little fascinating. Like, I don't think that she's a little bit, I think she's got a little bit of a narcissistic tendencies. I mean, these people that are unwilling or incapable of examining themselves.
Well, she was so sure that Black women just loved her. She went against the advice of their own jury consultant and said, oh, no, so she had no idea that people were going to connect with this idea of police corruption, and especially Black women who've watched it happen, in their communities. And so, she's pretty out of touch.
Yeah.
Really
very out of touch.
I don't know.
Well, and all of them it just felt like you were all out of touch, but it just felt like Marcia Clark. The thing that I found really wrong is just, I kind of feel like she just turned, like, the minute things were going wrong, you're part of a team. And the minute things went wrong, you started turning your back on people. I'm sorry, but I do believe that Mark Furman, because he claimed that he had reached out to Marcia Clark and wanted to talk to her. I believe she ignored all of his phone calls. I believe that. And so I just think she's the kind of person that's like, ugh, this guy wronged me. F him. I'm not going to return his phone calls. It's like, slow down, honey. Why don't you wait and see what he has to say? Maybe you guys together could figure out a way of doing
Maybe you could fix this. Yeah,
Maybe
no, she abandoned him.
Yeah, she abandoned. There's a pattern of abandoning. I get the sense that she abandoned Chris Darden when he did the whole, glove thing. You got this vibe from her. Like the minute she's gone. Anyway, that's
So anyway, going back to getting into the trial, they focus on Johnny Cochran, and it was funny because Carl Douglas, who ends up being kind of the narrator of this film,
he's a character, man.
He is a character,
and he firmly believes OJ is innocent. Do you still
think he said that?
Oh no, I believe he does.
No, he said at the end, he said, I don't know what happened, but I feel comfortable in knowing that I defended a man who, that there was reasonable doubt, and I defended a man who should not have been convicted.
Okay.
And I feel fine with that.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he specifically said, I don't know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, just this, this starts the kind of the split between Bob Shapiro, who was kind of a lazy lawyer. He said something like, OJ's going to lose. Let's just do the best we can for him.
Yeah.
And Cochran's like, fuck that. We're going to win this thing. He's like, I've been practicing here all these years. This shit happens all the time. And he said, of course they did this. This is LA.
Well, but the other part of it too is, what kind of deal, Bob Shapiro, do you think you're going to get for OJ besides life without parole? Well,
he wasn't even trying to deal. He was just basically saying he's guilty. He's going to lose. There's not a lot we can do. We're just going to try to do the best we can for him. He didn't believe in his innocence at all. And maybe, Cochran maybe did, maybe didn't notice that what he was focusing on was, of course, there's police misconduct here, which has nothing to do with OJ's guilt or innocence.
Yeah.
It's simply something to raise reasonable doubt. But Cochran was 100% sure he knew from everything that he'd experienced and seen that there was crooked shit going on in this case, just like every other case.
Yeah.
This case is no different just because it's OJ. But, that they really got handed this gift with Furman. And then we see Jeffrey Toobin, who I can't believe they let this guy back in.
Jeffrey Toobin?
Yeah.
Now, okay, so because I had some thoughts about Jeffrey Toobin, and I'm like, I know this name. I'm sorry.
You know what he did, right?
Okay, let me just. Is this the guy that was jerking off on a Zoom meeting?
Yes. I don't know if he thought, I think he thought he was off camera, but he wasn't. And he was having a Zoom meeting with colleagues from the New Yorker, where he was a writer, and he was masturbating. And everyone's like, hello, Jeff, we can see you. Your camera's on. And so he got let go from the New Yorker, and then he was working. He was for years, he was a legal analyst at ABC News. And then CNN took him back and gave him a job. And now he's in this documentary. And I'm like, God, these men, they'll just let them come back after and also too, he talks about how he went to Harvard and he spent 6 years as a federal prosecutor. 6 years. Okay. Not a lot. And he knew Alan Dershowitz because he was his criminal law professor at Harvard. And so he kind of had, these connections, and then he got hired at the New Yorker. And I just thought he was real pompous, anytime you see him. It's like, Jeff, calm down. You were a DA basically for 6 years. Did you even try a case? I mean, come on. Anyway, I just don't like him.
Yeah, I don't like him either. But one of the things that I thought was very annoying, this is at the very end, and I wrote this down, which is they were talking about after OJ died. And Jeffrey Toobin makes this comment like, you know what? I heard about OJ and when he died, and I really felt like he should have died in prison. I'm like, okay, but you sensationalized the Furman stuff. You
He
are
brought
part
it
of the
to people.
problem.
Yeah.
You were a journalist that capitalized on this and got book deals and got all this
Yeah.
stuff. Oh, he should have died in prison. It's like, fuck you, Jeffrey Toobin. Like, don't sit here and pretend like now you, justice was denied. It's like, you
Well,
were part of this too.
yeah.
So don't pretend like you didn't have a part of this. But I knew that name was familiar. I was like, is that the same guy? Oh my God. So you really have to think about someone that cannot wait till the end of a Zoom meeting to jerk off.
I know.
This was 2020. You could jerk off all goddamn day.
Right. There wasn't a lot happening.
There's not a lot happening. You're in your house by yourself. You could be doing it 24/7. 1 hour a day, you got to stop for your meeting with your colleagues.
God.
That's an illness. Like,
well, let me tell you a little other piece of gossip about him while we're on the subject.
Okay, good. Because I don't like him.
So many years ago, he had an affair with the daughter of another legal commentator. I can't remember his name. But anyway, and she was 13 years younger than him. Mm-hmm. And I think he was married. Yeah, he was married, had a family, had an affair with this young woman, got her pregnant, gave her money to have an abortion, said, I want you to have an abortion. She didn't do it. And he said, well, don't expect anything from me. And he just abandoned her. Mm-hmm. And then she took him to court and had to sue him to establish paternity and get child support. And like, he's never even seen the kid. Ugh. And
what a winner.
And and this is the daughter of his friend. Mm-hmm. He was also another legal commentator.
Is he still married?
To the same, I don't know if he's still married to the same woman. I kind of think he is.
Oh, dear God. This woman really has put up with a lot here.
She's probably she'd go away. I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him in any documentaries.
But I cannot stand people who profit from something, get something from something. You were part of the problem. And then at the end, you kind of act like, how did this happen? It's like,
yeah.
Keep jerking off, you idiot.
Yeah, go back to jerking off. Let us all just go on our way. So then they get into how, the case could have been filed in Santa Monica, in the Santa Monica courthouse, because that's the jurisdiction where it occurred. But then that would have been pretty much an all-white jury, and they didn't want that. They didn't want a repeat of Rodney King. And so they made the decision. I also had heard, I don't even know if this is true, but back in the day, people said they also wanted it to be in downtown LA because that's where their offices are. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to it would be difficult to have to go back and forth between the main branch and Santa Monica every day. And they just wanted to be close there and have all their resources there and everything.
But Santa Monica is a separate city, and is Santa Monica LA County?
Yeah.
Okay, it is. Okay.
So in a county, they'll have several, courthouses in different cities, especially Los Angeles because it's so big. So it's still Los Angeles County, but they wanted to avoid the white jury. They really thought that they had a slam dunk case, and they wanted the jury to be diverse. They did not want to have a repeat of Rodney King. Mm-hmm. And everyone has really, really high hopes for this jury. And so speaking of jury selection, you remember the woman who was the jury consultant for OJ, Joellen Demetrius? Mm-hmm. And she pegged this. Her profile for the best juror was a female African-American with a high school diploma or less, who was skeptical of the police. Mm. And she actually served as the jury consultant for that guy, Kyle Rittenhouse, who was also acquitted.
Yeah.
So
she's good.
She's good. And like I said, the DA's jury consultants were basically telling them that, that black women are the word. You do not want black women on this jury. Mm-hmm. And then Marsha Clark said, well, F you. I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah. So, and that's part of the problem, too. Has she ever come out and had an interview where she kind of owned up to some of these mistakes? Like, I wasn't listening to anyone. I thought I knew what was best.
I highly doubt it. Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I mean, she wrote her book after the trial like everybody else did. But of course, it was just a self-serving, thing. And I know. And it wasn't even far enough after to really do any kind of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how she feels today. I think she just doesn't even want to talk about it.
Well, yes and no, though. Sarah Paulson, who played her in the Ryan Murphy docuseries, took her to the Emmys or Golden Globes and was her date.
Yeah, because that's something like fun and glamorous. I mean, I don't think she really wants to talk about what happened or her role in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they asked her to be part of this movie.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So.
All right.
Psych Legal Pop will be right back after these messages.
Where are we now? This is where Bill Hodgman was one of the senior attorneys, started to have chest pain, so he had to bow out.
Yeah.
And Chris Darden was brought in.
Well, and the timing of this was interesting because this was after the jury had been picked. So so they picked the jury, and so it was 2 months of jury selection, interviewing 250 people.
Yeah.
So the jury was 8 Black people, 6 female, 2 male, 1 white female, 1 Hispanic male, and 2 people, 1 man and 1 woman of mixed race. And so they've picked the jury, and then Hodgman is unable to go on. So then they ask Darden to join the team. And Johnny Cochran's like, well, isn't this curious?
Mm-hmm.
That Darden is showing up now after we have 8 Black people on the jury.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, he got a lot of shit.
Yeah.
They called him the token. And I guess he said he was hesitant to do it, but I don't know if I believe that. I mean, that's like an opportunity of a lifetime. I mean,
yeah.
Why would you be hesitant if you were so confident in your case and, you were such a good prosecutor? Because then he's trying to defend himself saying, no, I was picked not because of my race, but because I was a great prosecutor.
I was a beast.
I was a beast. Oh my gosh. Do you know how easy it is statistically? These prosecutors, they don't bring cases they are not positive they can win.
Yeah.
They only prosecute the best cases. And, that's why it's easy to win 15 cases in a row or whatever he did.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. But this, and then he talks about how trial lawyers have big egos. And that this was this beginning of this back and forth, but now it's decided that Shapiro is going to take a back seat to Cochran, and Johnny Cochran's going to be the lead.
Yeah, well, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
Robert Shapiro was not a trial lawyer. I don't think he'd ever tried a case. He was a celebrity lawyer who got deals for people, and he was not a trial lawyer. And Cochran was a very, very seasoned trial lawyer who specialized in cases of police brutality and civil rights.
Yeah. And that tells you a lot about his ego, that he still feels like felt like he was slighted. That he still, because Shapiro still had a problem with being slighted.
Yeah. And not very loyal was because at the end of all this, we'll talk about what happened, what he did at the very end of all this. But and then the cameras, they talk about how, Judge Ito, who a lot of people blamed for a lot of stuff. I don't know how much blame he gets, but I think one of the issues that probably didn't help was that he allowed cameras in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that helped or hurt. I don't know. But it certainly made it into a huge media circus.
Mm-hmm.
And people were just analyzing it every day. And
well, who is that solely Judge Ito's discretion, whether or not they're going to be cameras? Or do you feel like he was getting pressure from someone?
Oh, I'm sure people weighed in on what they thought. So there's no cameras allowed in federal court, but in state court, it is the discretion of the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in this case, he was because, literally, this is the trial of the century.
Yeah.
So there's this need to be transparent, I think.
Mm.
So I think he wanted, people were probably advocating for, people need to be able to see this, see what's going on. And I don't think they really could have anticipated just what it turned into, the media circus that it turned into. And again, I don't know. Ultimately, I mean, if the jury is sequestered, then I don't know if it helps or hurts anybody's case, because the hypothetical, supposedly the jury's not hearing any of this stuff. But, they did have visits with their families when they were sequestered. Their families could be watching this at home, and then they visit and they talk about it.
That's true.
So, so we all know how that went.
Yes, we do.
And let's see. And even Yolanda, the juror, she said when they had the opening statements and Christopher Darden gets up, she's kind of like, well, why is he here? She could tell that they were playing to race. And, she knew that he was brought in, kind of at the 11th hour, because Hodgman, I think, was the one who, he was still on the case when they were doing jury selection. So the jurors are seeing him for the first time.
Yeah.
He wasn't there during all of that. And so that was her first clue that something was up. And so, Cochran comes out with his themes of a, rush to judgment. He brings up Mark Furman, that, the jury's going to hear about him. Quotes Martin Luther King about an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and then it starts. Start with Ron Shipman, who was a reluctant,
poor Ron Ship
witness.
Is it Ron Ship or Shipman?
Ship.
Poor Ron Ship. I really felt for him. OJ did him dirty. I mean, I understand he was fighting for his life, but why? Also, you don't feel so sorry for Ron Ship?
No. Ron Ship was, look, I mean, didn't he say he knew, I mean, if he was around Nicole and OJ that much, and he's part of the LAPD, and the LAPD has been called to their house. I don't know if he personally was ever called to their house. He knew what was going on between these two, and he was in denial because he liked going over to OJ's house and hanging out with OJ.
Yeah.
So, and he wouldn't be being called to testify if he didn't know something. That's why he's there, because he does know about them. But,
so why during Ron Ship's testimony or being cross-examined by Carl Douglas, one theme that kept coming up was how Marcia or Chris Darden, there were no objections. There weren't a lot of objections. They kind of just let them sort of hang. Well, Ron Ship was saying that he kind of felt like they let him hang out to dry a bit.
Well, I don't think there were no objections. I think what he was saying was that they were objecting, but they were getting overruled.
Oh, okay.
Like every time he started to get into trying to attack his credibility, if they would object, then the judge would just overrule it. So there was like no way for them to really protect him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So then, the stuff with the domestic violence starts coming in. The 1989 911 call, which was particularly bad.
Yeah.
And she called 911 8 times that they could find. And he was actually prosecuted for one of the incidents where he pled no contest. He never, nothing happened to him. But, that was when she lived on Gretna Green, and that was the time where he was breaking down the door, and she's like, he's going to kill me, and the kids are upstairs. And the documentary that we saw, I think it was the one that her sisters made, where they talked about how one of OJ's habits that he did was, after they broke up and she moved into this condo, he would lurk in the bushes and spy on her, and he would catch men coming over and, go crazy. And it's probably what he was doing there that night, that the murder happened. And, I mean, I don't know. It was just happening in front of all of these people, and it's documented, and it's just really sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad that nothing was done to protect this woman.
Yeah. Well, and then is this where they get into Tom Lang, his testimony, one of the detectives? Because obviously a good defense attorney is going to bring in and ask questions about them looking and investigating alternative people, alternative facts. Like, what other ways did you go? And I like Tom Lang. As I said, I thought he was the best, like, crusty old policeman. But you know what? I don't think they were wrong. I do think that this is a problem with the LAPD. I was like, a little bit like, yeah, you know what? Why didn't you stop and like look to see if Ron Goldman had any enemies? Or, yeah, I get Tom Lang. Like, everything was pointing in that direction. The blood trail was pointing there, but you didn't even bother to like look at anybody else, like to do your due diligence, to at least, cross your T's, dot your I's. That's unreal to me.
Especially in this case.
With so many eyes on this case. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand that's good defense work, and you should ask those questions, but they didn't. Yeah, they didn't think of Lang said something to the effect of, well, there was no evidence that was pointing me in any other direction, which could be true. But you should always because remember, they were trying to, the defense was trying to say Faye Resnick, her friend, Faye Resnick had drug dealers after her or something. And did you look into that? And, of course they didn't. And if that were true, that would be something you'd look at, but I don't think that was true. I think that was just a rumor or
those
something
things
OJ told them.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, I do think that there shouldn't there be. I mean, it seems like you're a detective with the LAPD. You've been a detective for over 20 years. You've testified in a lot of cases. It's very standard for defense attorneys to point out, did you investigate alternative theories? I don't know why. I mean, I kind of feel like, I'm sorry, they were poking holes in the fact that there's a problem here. That they should be. There needs to be. It should be required that they had to interview at least a certain number of people that knew Ron Goldman and asked him, like, does he have enemies? It's like the question number one that everyone always asks.
But how do we know he didn't?
Well, he claimed, but wouldn't he have said that in the testimony? Wouldn't he have said, well, we went to John blah, blah, blah's house and we asked him, and then we went to this person. I think he would have said to them, yeah, this is all the other investigating that we did.
Yeah, I don't know. No one thought it was anyone but OJ.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. I'm just saying that I'm getting more and more on this reasonable doubt thing. I'm with Yolanda on this because I think these were good points. They were good points.
Yeah. So they definitely wanted to show in the trial that this was a planned killing. Although I don't know how much I believe that. I think that OJ had definitely had thoughts that were not good. What I felt from the documentary with her sisters, I think what really happened that day, what really made him snap that day, I don't think he planned it prior to that day, was the recital and how he was treated at the recital and after the recital. Because Nicole had decided that she really was done with him. She was really pissed because he actually reported her to the IRS over some kind of transaction saying that she didn't pay taxes on something. And it really upset her. And he was doing it just to fuck with her. And it was kind of like just the last straw with her. And because for a while there, they were a little bit back and forth. She was feeling guilty, like she thought her kids should grow up with their parents and together. And, she was really struggling. And of course, he was always around. He never left her alone. And, but she got really upset about this one thing. And she just cut off communication with him when he came to the recital. Like normally they would save him a seat. They didn't save him a seat. No one would talk to him at the recital.
He could not go to Mezzaluna after.
No, he was not
invited to dinner.
Not invited to dinner. And they said in this documentary that it was like he realized he was no longer part of their family.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. They'd
Mm-hmm.
cut him out. And I think that's what made him snap. And then the rest of that day, like Cato, he comes back, it's like to Rockingham at 6 or 6:30. And he's complaining about how Nicole was dressed at the recital.
She was wearing a short black dress.
Yeah. He's just kind of ranting. And then he says he's going to go get something to eat. And Cato invites himself to go. And OJ was not happy about that. And it was very awkward. And I think he was thinking, when he said he was going to leave, I think he was leaving to go to confront Nicole. Not necessarily to kill her. I don't know. But he was going to go confront her, but that got delayed because he had to go to McDonald's with Cato.
Or he said, because he wasn't invited to dinner, and maybe he thought maybe he was going to go to that restaurant. Maybe he knew where they were going. And he's like, maybe I'll drive over there and I'll stalk her there. Or I'll wait outside, or I'll do this or I'll do that. And yeah, Cato kind of threw him for a loop.
It delayed it.
But yeah, I'm with you on this. I don't think he planned it in that way. I do think that before he got on that plane, I think he was like, I got to confront her over this. I've got to, I'm mad, I'm angry, and I've got to say something to her. Like he needed to see her or confront her.
Yeah. So I guess the last time Cato saw him, it was like 9:35. They got back to the house. Cato goes, starts to go in, and he thought OJ was going to come in, and OJ didn't. And he got back into his car and he left. And so there was like an hour and 10 minutes that's kind of unaccounted for. And, they have this timeline which is kind of silly. They're basing it on this dog. The plaintive wailing of a dog at 10:15. And that's what they think, that's the time of death.
And FYI, there are murders at my house like every 20 minutes because my dogs are wailing constantly about someone's walking by.
I mean, that's really stretching it. That's like, okay. And then the woman who sold her story claims that she saw him. I don't know how credible of a witness she really is.
Oh, really? I kind of felt bad for her because I felt like Marsha Clark was mean to her too.
Well, she fucked up her thing.
How was
her
she to have known that she wasn't supposed to? She wasn't the lady was not working at the time. Someone was willing to buy your story. How was she to know that she was?
Maybe Marsha should have told her.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
People who are going to come after you and don't do this.
Yeah. So that's it. But it's like, but Marsha's mad at her now. It's like, maybe you didn't do your job, Marsha.
Anyway, that was at 10:50. So it's only a 4.5 minute drive from Nicole's to OJ's house. So if they claim the murder happens at 10:15, why is he just driving back at 10:50? What was he doing there for another, 35 minutes? So that doesn't really make sense. And then he was able to get in and get his stuff, change his clothes, do whatever, shower, and get picked up at 11:05. I mean, that's 15 minutes after this woman allegedly sees him driving. This is a crappy timeline. I always thought it was really a stretch. And I never understood like I wonder how far in advance this trip to Chicago was even planned.
That's a good question.
Darden made it sound like this trip was planned as an alibi. And, because the killing was planned. Well, if it was planned as an alibi, why didn't you use it as such? Like, why did you do everything? I mean, the timeline was still off. I don't know.
Well, and also, I don't know. We see in the first couple episodes the limo driver testifying, and I got the vibe that it was very much like that the limo driver had a gig. Like, oh, okay, it's 10 something. I take this person to the airport at this time. I didn't get the sense that like he was that day calling them, saying, okay, I got to go to Chicago. He had something in Chicago that he was going to, right? He had a reason. So I didn't think it was that. I think it was very much, I gotta yell at her before I get on this plane.
No, he wanted he wanted to rage on her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how dare you, treat me like this?
Yeah. Scare her to death. And
Yeah.
then, sorry for the, comment, but like scare her so much or get her to take him back. Like, and okay, now I can get on this plane and go. You know? He needed that control again.
Yeah. So,
all right. Have we gotten to the F. Lee Bailey and Furman?
Well, yeah. So let's go to the glove. Let's go to Furman.
Okay.
Furman. And, I guess they have to, who was it in the documentary that was saying that they had so much other evidence? Why did they even use the glove? I think it was maybe Furman. I think he was saying, well, if you thought there was such an issue with the glove, like, why keep it out? But they couldn't keep the defense from bringing it up. So anyway.
Well, but I also, Bill Thompson, the DNA expert, he made a comment about that too. But I think it was really Furman who felt like he was being hung out to dry, which he was. And, again.
And it is quite a coincidence that this guy finds both of the gloves.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It is. It is really, oh, wow, lucky you. And also, the second glove at Rockingham is like in the back of the property in between a wall that you have to scale to get over and this little bungalow where Cato's living. Like, why would you plant it back there? And why would you, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's strange.
Yes, it is.
I don't know.
Well, and the other thing I thought was very strange, which really helped the defense, was I guess it was Van Adder. Like, they interviewed OJ, took his blood, and then Van Adder or someone else went to the crime scene, went to Rockingham, dropped it off with Fung there, versus taking the blood from OJ
straight to the police department,
which is what protocol is. And again, I think that was back to the whole thing of how they ended up with OJ going down the 405. It was about the celebrity part. And I think Van Adder was like, I'm going to go take it right to Fung and give it to him. But that really hurt their case because, all you needed to do was just open up that vial and plant it.
Yeah, and this comes later, but the back gate, the whole back gate thing.
Oh, God, yeah.
Where there's no blood on the back gate that's even seen, let alone tested, the night of the murders. And then suddenly 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, there's some blood on here. Let's test it. That was really strange.
And but why is where's the prosecution in all of this? Why aren't they going, wait a second? I just felt like the defense found a lot more stuff or inconsistencies than the prosecution did.
Well, the prosecution was really obsessed with these blood droplets at Bundy and at Rockingham that were a mixture of OJ and Nicole's blood or OJ and Ron's blood, or, and that they really backed themselves into a corner because that's how they attacked this whole cross-contamination thing. Because at the crime scene, they covered her with a blanket that was not sterile. It came from inside of her house. And they were going back and forth between the bodies. And it's this transfer of, this cross-contamination. And as the DNA expert explained, it takes very little DNA to cross-contaminate. And then something over here is contaminated, then it contaminates something else. And, it's like a virus just spreading around. So I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
That comes on a little bit later. But anyway, so, they call him F. Lee Bailey. They talk about the glove and they go through how he found it and all that kind of stuff. But what F. Lee Bailey really did was set him up to, take the fall later for using the N-word and talking about Black people in a certain way and being violent and having, all that stuff.
Yeah. And I thought Mark Furman was going to address that, but he never does. He never addresses why he lied, why he felt like, but we never hear from him. He never says, you know what, I know I lied. I shouldn't have lied. I felt like if I admitted that I had said those things, that everything would fall apart.
Well, I think he did say something along those lines, that he was fucked if he did, fucked if he didn't, or he acknowledged that, and he admitted to lying. And then later in the documentary, they press him even more about, well, why did you do all this? And that's when he kind of threw up his hands and was like, you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah.
It happened. What am I'm not going to sit here and, talk about it, basically.
Yeah.
So he knew, but he was in a corner.
Yeah.
And he said he knew that F. Lee Bailey was going to do this to him, and he did. And what could he do?
Well, he could have not lied, but okay.
Well, but then we wouldn't even be here. There would be no bloody gloves. There would be none of this. So anyway, that's like the end of episode 3.
Yes. Because F. Lee Bailey got him in a corner to admit that he had not said the N-word in 10 years. Had not said the N-word in 10 years. And apparently he had a lot.
Surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
So this is the end of part 1. We talked so much about this particular case and this documentary that we just went on and on and on. So we divided it into 2. So please check out the second part of this, where we discuss primarily episode 4 of the documentary. If you are, if you like our podcast and like us, please give us a 5-star rating and review. If you haven't already, please check out our Patreon, where you get bonus content from us. Go check us out on social media at Psycholegal Pop, at TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky. And tell your friend about the podcast. All right. Thanks so much. Bye.